My name is Philip Sellers. I'm going to introduce you to a close friend and a colleague who everyone respects as being a quite imaginative and ultimately creative in every way possible as a storyteller and a musician, and just an all-around spiritual wonder from Savannah, Georgia, Chase Anderson. Hi, Chase.
Hey, how are y'all doing out there? Phil, is that you, Mr. Sellers?
Peeking at you from the other side of the camera, and I'm happy to be up here in Savannah. I've been away for a few years, but it's wonderful to be here, and you've made this a wonderful visit too. And it's just a pleasure walking around the city and reminiscing and things, because we had a lot of fun.
Indeed.
And we continue. We're in a process of a lot of good stuff.
Yeah. Even had an existential experience this afternoon. I don't need to go into it on this go round, but yeah, living in downtown Savannah, the historic district, has always been a unique experience, to say the least. And in the past few years, it's become quite an adventure to live downtown Savannah, but nevertheless still magical and every bit as romantic on one level as you might have heard about or even already know. But ultimately, there's a lot of parts of our history. Even an individual has parts of his history that they may not be so proud of, or some secret. You just don't want people to know. Whatever. The city does that too. Leaves behind parts of its history that it would rather people either not know about or did not consider important enough or significant enough in the sort of march to progress that happens in cities. So we certainly have that. In the last 4 days, Mr. Sellers and I, who's behind the lens, which one of these 5 lenses is actually taking all this in, Phil?
The center of the larger
And what's your
set
phone?
of 3.
What phone are you using?
This is a Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra.
Great. It's got 5 lenses on it, right?
Yes, this was this particular model was one of the big changes that Samsung made at a time when they wanted to overtake, if they possible, overtake or at least meet the standards that Apple set with their iPhones.
Yeah.
So things began to look like it was going to be cameras that would really be the thing that sets these expensive smartphones off into another realm where they're the dominant cell phones to have either Apple or Android operating systems. So this one is a really nice unit for that purpose, for filming.
Great. And it's a custom rig it's inside of too, that Mr. Sellers has sort of concocted, put together over the last few years, really a lot of trial and error. But we actually hope that once we get this podcast and the YouTube videos up and moving based on our footage we took today, that we'll be able to give you some more details on that. But
absolutely. Well, one thing that we're doing here that's really special in my mind with the rig as we're filming this is we've got you on a full separation stereo system from the great mic manufacturing company, Saramonic.
Yep.
So I'm using 2 micro shotgun microphones from Saramonic, left and right.
you want to see what we sound?
Yeah, we want to see what it sounds like. And so what are we going to talk about, Mr. Anderson? In this song that you've created.
Yeah.
Tell our viewers what they're going to be seeing and listening to.
One of my music projects I've been working on lately, has to do with taking some of Savannah's most well-known and not so well-known ghost stories, and some of which have actual basis in historical records, and some of the stories don't. But the purpose would be to put them to music, as yet another sort of way into understanding about the nature of ghosts, the nature of what haunts a place, what remains behind long after people have are dead and gone. What they left behind, not just in terms of their architecture or their things that they made or whatever, or their money or whatever, but more to the point, their energy sort of stays behind in a place like this. We're inside of the historic district where we're filming this. The Savannah Historic District is 2.5 square miles. It's the largest urban historic district or landmark district in the United States. It's definitely under threat from, the same story you may have heard, overdevelopment. But nevertheless, when it comes to the fact that we're considered to be the most haunted city in the United States, we better deliver, first of all, when you come here and go on a ghost tour, which thousands of people do every year. And we have billions of ghost tour guides now, maybe not quite that much, but there's a lot, and a lot of people making money on it. And I've been in the ghost tour business myself. I love the paranormal, I love ghosts. I grew up, my mother, either reading or telling me ghost stories or scaring the hell out of me, with old witch stories and things like that. So that's kind of where I came out of. I was on the road for 30 something years, in and out of recording studios, as a musician, multi-instrumentalist, laying down tracks for other people, some of whom you may have heard of. But along the way, I became a storyteller and then a sort of self-trained actor, rooted in Dickensian and Shakespearean literature performance. And then when I got back to Savannah, where my grandmama was born downtown here, when I first got here, originally from South Georgia, I discovered this initial pool of ghost stories that have been around a long time. And so I decided to start putting some of them, like the famous ghost story of Alice Riley, who haunts Wright Square, some say, to music, a story that originates out of the colonial records of Georgia. And the story is basically this, or the history is this, that there's a ship in 1734, a year after the colony is created, 1733, by James Oglethorpe, a Freemason who designed the entire historic district. A year later, or close to a year later, a ship appears off the coast of Georgia, off Tybee Island at North Beach, more or less, in a place they called Tybee Roads, which was not a road, but it was like the mouth of the Savannah River. And the ship is going down, according to colonial records, in a gale storm. And it just so happens that at the same time this ship is going down, and by the way, the ship is full of Irish indentured servants, right, and the captain and crew. But the ship is going down because it got caught in a gale force wind, which actually drove it off course from where it was going to South Carolina, Port Royal, I think, and drove it off course into the mouth of the Savannah River out at right near North Beach on Tybee. At the same time, General Oglethorpe happens to be leaving Georgia for the first time. There'll be several trips back to England, but this is his first trip back to England after founding the colony. And he's in a ship going out and looks over and sees this ship going down. And by the way, by now, this gale force wind is almost at hurricane strength. So the ship is going down. Oglethorpe sees the ship going down. The Oglethorpe going out, sees the ship going down, and apparently in small dinghy boats, which they already had out there for the colony. They got on the dinghy boats in a gale and managed to get to the ship as the ship is beginning to go down, and with grappling hooks, according to one story, they managed to actually scramble up on board, and this is where the first part of this ends, I guess you could say. We'll pick it up later. But when they get on board, they actually discovered, huddled all around them, approximately 40 starving Irish indentured servants, originally bound apparently for Charleston, but now finding themselves on deck with the absolutely shocked expressions on the faces of Oglethorpe and all of his men in encountering them. The rest of the story there's two other parts. I've been working a ballad version of this in sort of the traditional 18th century ballad style or folk ballad style because it sort of matches the time period. But it's really ultimately just kind of my way of, and hopefully as you listen to it, kind of another way into ghosts. Because this story eventually, which you won't find in the colonial records, is the ghost story that emerged or crept out of the crypt, so to speak, in regard to the tragic outcome of Alice Riley and her friend Richard White, both from Ireland. Both become the first two people hanged in the colony of Georgia. She becoming the first woman hanged in Georgia, and differing opinions as to the location of the hanging, but no differing opinions at all as to the location of the ghost of Alice Riley that haunts Wright Square.
Well, I can feel the drama. Let's hear it. And this is an amazing project that you've accomplished. And
this one's still, we're in the middle of this, like we were today, right? We're still in the middle of this
absolutely.
filming. This is a song I'm still in the process of actually finishing, so we wanted to let you in on, sort of the backstory or the process involved in all of this. And we haven't even mentioned our documentary we're currently working on either. So, and the song is hopefully will find itself in the documentary, or maybe a separate film altogether.
Yes, a documentary about not just legendary stories in Savannah, but stories that are rarely told. For what reason? Well, it's been decades and centuries that separate some of the authentic civilization that existed here, and what we come to be accustomed to in contemporary media is nothing like it was. Justice was not established well. Policing and protection and security was practically non-existent. And you have sailors who've been at sea for months and years in some cases, arriving in a port city that's suddenly offering every indulgent activity and misdeeds and satisfactions of flesh-related desire and drugs and every mischievous opportunity there was. So these sailors are hungry for excitement, and they have money to spend. You can't spend a lot of money up in the North Atlantic and then arrive in Savannah, Georgia without having a lot in your pocket.
Right, exactly.
So there you have the setting, and here are these Irish here and some. Well, let's just hear some of the story about Alice Riley.
Yeah, so we'll sort of stumble together, as it were, staggering through this verse by verse, get an idea of that most of this is out of the colonial records of Georgia as far as the factual part of it. But the rest you'll see is clearly artistic license and the creation of what might have happened or how things might have actually occurred in what will become a tragic ending to their time here in Savannah and a haunting. This is called The Ghost of Alice Riley. My name is Alice Riley. I haunt the tidy coast. I haunt the square right down in Savannah town the most. Came in this place from Ireland, bound for America, to Charleston as indentured slaves, on the Irish they would say. They would say. Crossed over the wide Atlantic, packed in the bottom hold. The sky was fair for most of it, for those who bought and sold. One day the Carolina coast was spotted harborside. A storm arose that drove us toward Savannah at high tide. At high tide. The gale was now upon us. The mainsail broke in two. Going down were all of us, the captain and the crew. Going down. And then you have Oglethorpe seeing this, gets in the dinghies and his men, and they get on board, and all of this is part of the song as well. So that song continues with that very thing, with we're going down, we think we're all going to die, but I do hear in the distance the sound of men on the coast over on North Beach, the sound of getting into boats. And then eventually the song describes them clambering up on board, and the first part of this song will end right there with the shocked expressions on the faces of Oglethorpe and all of his men as they look at 40 starving, huddling Irish indentured servants, completely in shock, looking up at them.
Viewers, you are hearing the pre-production musical soundtracks and music for the film that's going to be made about Alice Riley in Savannah, Georgia. And we're happy to have you viewing this because it's being done on naturally on a smartphone, which you likely have one in your pocket. And so
you may not have it encased in the customized frame and corresponding. Love the microphones. I want to hear what this sounds like. How about you, Phil?
I do. So let's do this because we could. This is episodic, my viewer friends.
It is.
So we will continue. We're going to take a little break here, and we're going to do some quick monitoring of what we're producing, and then we'll get back with you ASAP.
Indeed. See you then.
Bye, folks.